While Coronation Street is in first place, where it has been every month except one January since I started doing these rankings. But Coronation Street stays in number one again for May 2022 because I do still find it to have the strongest writing of the bunch. Although I do feel like we're getting to a place again, much like January, where if another soap opera would step up, I would put it ahead of Coronation Street. But so far, only Home and Away is the only one stepping up, ramping up stories to maybe overtake Coronation Street in June. But we'll see what happens in June. As for May, Corey stays in number one, and I'm not as high as I usually am on Corey for this month. I think it's mostly because I honestly feel like the show's main story definitely peaked in April last month. I don't think Coronation Street's gonna top April, how good April was to me, anytime soon because April was really good soap opera. May was just okay. We get we're gonna talk about the main story, then I'll get to the other stories. There's a lot of stories going on in Corey right now. So Toya and Imran end up getting married because this is still more of Imran's plot to keep baby Alfie and also keep the baby away from Abby. He has his reasons because Abby is an addict, a drug addict, and he thought she was using drugs again, even though she wasn't. And he went so far as to get somebody to lie to him and lie for him in court so that he could keep baby Alfie, and it wouldn't be for. So the trial would go Abby's way. But Abby has gotten backing because Kelly got some money when her mother died, and Kelly's given some of that to Abby, and Abby's using that for financial reasons to fight for the baby. So the story has continued to be set up well. I've talked about it every month. I've been doing these rankings. This has been a part of the main story that's been going on for over a year now on Coronation Street, and all overall they've done a good job. We got to a point where Abby has gotten clean to try and keep baby Alfie. This is her motivation to stay clean. But Imran, like I said, used bad circumstances to have someone lie for him in court so that he can get full custody of the baby and Abby just gets visitations. So Abby sets up on this journey to prove that Imran lied in court. And we even get a lot of Kelly questioning Imran's motivations. Kelly, who was there when Seb was murdered. This is what kicked off this whole story last March or April or May, I don't remember. Last spring, 2021. Seb was Abby's child that died in that brutal attack. And during that time, after that, is when Imran was trying to prove Kelly's innocence. So Kelly's always looked up to Imran. So it's been more, good character developments per usual in this story. I do think this story has been overall very character driven, although one character's motivations this month was questionable, which I'll get to here soon. But eventually Abby wants to just run away with baby Alfie, kidnap the baby, and go to Costa Rica. She gets fake passports for her and the baby and is all ready to do that. Kevin finds out about that, and we get this point where Kevin wants to reconcile with Abby. He was upset that she had that one night stand with Imran to conceive baby Alfie. He had his reasons for being upset, but to see Kevin's turnaround this month, I don't know if the show really set up Kevin's motivations that well for this story for me. Kevin was helping Abby basically kidnap Alfie. And I just didn't buy Kevin having the motivation to do this. Not just because he's been upset with Abby, but because he's been calling out everything right and wrong that both Abby and Imran have been doing now for months. So to see Kevin take this turn was definitely the first time in a while this story has taken a drastic plot-driven-esque turn rather than the usual character-driven stuff that we've been seeing. When Abby is supposed to get Alfie for the day, something comes up that Toya's gonna take Alfie for the day. Kevin decides to mess with Toya's car to keep her from taking Alfie, so that Abby can take baby Alfie. And so this is what happens. But Imran finds the passports, the fake passports, and stops Abby from doing this. He, however, doesn't want to have Toya or let Toya go to the police about this because he's starting to feel bad about all he's done to Abby with the whole lying in court, taking the baby away from her. It is Kelly that got through to Imran, and I think that fits the story because of the relationship that Kelly had looking up to Imran when Imran got Kelly off and out of prison. And so to end May, Imran stops Toya from going to the police, but they get into a car accident, and I don't know if that car accident is because of what Kevin did to the car, if Kevin didn't refix the car right, or why they crashed. We didn't actually get to see the crash. But overall, the story is still good. It's still one of the best stories on all of the 11 soap operas in my rankings. It's still probably the best story, honestly, if I'm being honest. But it just was not as strong, especially not as strong as April, because I thought April was firing on all cylinders, and I think that was the actual peak of the story for me. So I found some of this climax that we're getting of the story now. I assume it's the latest climax of the story. The story has had several climaxes because they've done such a good job of setting up the different paths for the different characters with this big umbrella story. But some of the motivations, like Kevin's, a little too plot driven for me. But I still think the story was overall strong. Definitely strong enough to keep Coronation Street at number 1. Now, the rest of the stories on the show is where the show is really struggling with me. And why I think that if another soap opera would just step up this summer, Coronation Street's number 1 spot could be up for grabs for me in my rankings. Now, they're telling some deeper stories here, like Faye can't have children. She has a ovarian failure problem. We get a lot of Summer in her diabetes. She just will not take her insulin. It's kind of hard to feel sorry for Summer, though, because she's doing all these problems to herself. And I get that it's like it's a mental health story too. She doesn't want to take her insulin because it makes her gain weight. But still, Summer can be a very annoying character, and I don't know if they're pulling off that storyline well, because it's getting a little bit redundant where Summer just keeps hurting herself. Summer also turned down Addie when he tried to start a little boyfriend-girlfriend thing with her, because she's been falling for this guy, Aaron, but Aaron kind of blows her off, but then Aaron visits her in the hospital, and frankly, I just don't care about this whatever sort of relationship it's supposed to be between Summer and Aaron. Daniel was getting a lot of grief in May for his involvement with pushing Max down the stairs, as he probably should, whereas Max is trying to do his penance for the shit he's been doing for the past several months. But we didn't get enough of these stories for me to really say that it's going well either. We got some problems between Yasmin and Stu. It's another story that's just not getting enough investment from the writers and producers for me to be invested in that story. And worst of all is Fizz, Phil, and Tyrone. Can I just say, I've talked about on Young and the Restless how Phyllis is one of the most annoying characters in soap opera history, while both Fizz and Tyrone are right up there. If I were to do a list of most annoying characters in soap opera history, Fizz and Tyrone would both be up there with Phyllis from Young and the Restless. So that's another story that I hate. Frankly, hate. We had some Peter earlier in the month in May, finding out about the Mr. Thorne character and his rust surgery. It was kind of like Peter and Aggie trying to take him down so he can't be a doctor anymore, which kind of worked, except he can still go abroad now and be a doctor abroad, so it was kind of a fail there too. We have Tim's impotence story, and that's causing problems between him and Sally. But see, none of these B and C stories are that interesting. So I do really feel like Coronation Street's getting to a point here in June with what I think is one of the last climaxes from the main story that they've got over a year's worth of drama from. It's time for Coronation Street to really start building up more main stories, because the B and C plots are either boring or just not that good. So for now, Coronation Street stays in my number one spot in my soap opera rankings out of 11, but just one soap opera would step up in June, maybe we would have a new number one. So far, only Shortland Street beat Coronation Street in January. That's the only month since October that I've been doing this that your Coronation Street was not in number one. We see my ranking. Shortland Street's fell to 8th place in my ranking, so it probably ain't gonna be Shortland Street in June. So right now, the only soap that's looking like it could pass Coronation Street in my rankings is Home and Away. But we'll see what June brings for Coronation Street. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, because Corey does have the best writing out of all 11. It's the strongest writing by far. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come with some good writing in June, and then Coronation Street's just easily still in my number one spot.